Party on, Todd.
Party on, Sal.
Rock on.
Rock on.
Well, welcome back, POJCasters, to another episode of the Party on John cast. The podcast of epic proportions with theology, whatever we're drinking, music, various topics, and two rockin' Johns. I'm Reverend Sal Samarco, ordained teaching elder in the Presbyterian Church, serving in the validated ministry of chaplaincy.
Always needing validated.
Please validate me.
And I'm Reverend Todd Laddick, serving as an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church of Greater New Jersey, serving in Newton, New Jersey, on certain higher ground than Sal.
It's the only higher ground that I give them.
That God gives me.
Unfortunately, damn you, John Calvin. It's a theology joke.
It's a theology joke. Lots of bad theology jokes on here.
Damn you, Calvin. I'll just kind of pretend to get them.
Yeah. They're only slightly. Well, I don't know if they're better or worse than bad dad jokes, but they're on par at least.
They're on par with those too.
Yeah.
So as you can hear, POJCasters, we do have a guest with us. Actually, we have a good friend, Chris, who is the owner of Training for Life Martial Arts, a dojo that I don't attend enough. But I did get my third-degree black belt through. So, hey, Chris.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Introduce yourself.
Chris Laciura. I run Training for Life Martial Arts in Pompton Plains, New Jersey. We teach anything and everything, mostly Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu right now, some striking, kids, adults. When I'm not doing that, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, and a part-time triathlete, trying to be, but not so much right now.
Nice.
That sounds like 2020. I am, but not so much right now.
That's 2020 in a nutshell.
It is.
Well,
I guess that probably brings us to our Hebrews segment.
It does.
I got that one. That was good.
Before we get there, how do we know that God loves beer?
How, Sal?
Or coffee? He wrote about it in the book of Hebrews.
But
It's worse every time.
Every time.
I'm probably going to steal it, so.
It's all yours.
Right?
That is a bona fide dad joke.
Yeah. Pastor dad joke at that.
Pastor dad joke.
So why don't we give the honors to our guest to tell us what he is drinking? Chris?
So it's it's an energy drink, but it's marketed as a clean energy drink, I guess. It's got some caffeine, it's got some vitamins. Supposedly it doesn't have any of the extra garbage. Company is called Kill Cliff, and it's pretty tasty, and it does the trick, especially when I think I had to get up today at 5:30. So
I was going to say it's got the word "kill" in it, so I mean,
yeah,
I don't know
what it is, but it does the trick.
Yeah, cool.
Does it make your heart race like Red Bull?
No, it doesn't. No jitters, nothing like that. So
where can you get it? I'm gonna give it a try.
I ordered on Amazon.
Okay. I
actually found out about it as there's a recovery drink. Like if you work out, you take the drink after, which I do like. That one was what seemed to be doing the trick. And then I found that they had an energy drink, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna give that a shot too. And I like the company. It's some Navy SEALs that started it. So
that right there makes me want to support it. Yep.
Yeah, so.
And what flavor are you drinking?
Citrus, smashing citrus.
Okay. I'm gonna give it a try.
Well, we do at the end of the show. We put the links to all of our stuff in the notes. So
yeah, we'll give them some props.
Nice.
You or me, Sal?
I'll go. We are not being as healthy as Chris.
No.
I'm drinking Fat Tire. Was up until recently an independent craft brewery, but they sold out. But
who bought them?
It's a Australian company, I think. So
Wow.
I have a hard fast rule in my life. I try not to drink beer. I'm an ethical drunk. I try not to drink beer from like Budweiser or Coors or the big conglomerates.
I'm not so ethical with my with my beer drinking.
So, but this one I still drink because actually Allison loves it, so I allow it. Your wife says I want it, you buy it.
Where do you get it?
You can get it in most liquor stores or local liquor store.
Gotcha.
I'm sure one of the many that dot Route 23.
And who owns it again? I'm sorry. My attention span
Well,
is...
it's Fat Tire, but I don't know the company. It's an Australian company.
It's not Budweiser, though.
It's not Budweiser.
That's all that matters, right?
Well, I guess if the Australians bought it, it must be good. They like to party.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess that brings it up to me, doesn't it?
It does bring it up to you.
Okay. So I am drinking Brooklyn Brown Ale. And I love Brooklyn. I haven't had it in quite a while. And I had never had their brown ale. I love brown ales like Newcastle and others. But this is really, really good. It's kind of got a drier, hoppier taste, which I think is pretty consistent with Brooklyn. But they don't. It's kind of a Brooklyn thing, yeah. In fact, my first time ever having Brooklyn, I had an IPA not knowing what it was, and I hated it. And then as I grew into liking IPAs, I started to appreciate Brooklyn a little more than my initial date with Brooklyn was like a one and done. We broke up after first taste. And then but now I really appreciate it, and I don't think they go overboard with the hops on this. It's a nice dry drink, but it has the good qualities of a brown ale. So
Todd, I guess you're giving me hope that I should probably give it a second shot.
Yes. Yeah.
IPAs in general. I've tried, I would say maybe 3. So at what point did you finally turn the corner and say, you know what, these are pretty good?
It's a good question. I think I don't remember exactly when, but like as I became a more experienced drinker and liked drier drinks, I think I began to appreciate the hoppy nature of. I mean, some IPAs just taste like pine tar, and it's like I can't do that.
That's the problem with IPAs is they're super easy to make.
Yeah.
So every beer company has an IPA.
Yeah.
So you just have to find a good one.
I really like. I love Rebel IPA from Sam is really good. I love Dogfish Head. What is their 60-minute IPA? That's a really good one. The ones that are a little more citrusy and taste more like a grapefruit or something that tastes like it should be a little bitter and you don't mind it. Versus like, okay, who tapped the pine tree and why am I drinking this?
I like that.
Yeah. So, there's hope. I would try those two. And see if you can, build up a tolerance from there.
Yeah.
Or I would say Sam Adams has some good. They're 76.
76 is good.
It's technically an IPA, but it tastes more like a regular.
Yeah. Yeah. Start in the lighter end and then increase.
Yeah.
And then for a follow-up to that, I have a drink that is definitely not Methodist. It's made mostly with water and Crystal Light, but I decided to throw in a little Everclear, which makes it hard crystal. So
the running joke is that Methodists don't drink.
Yeah, we're not in our discipline and in our history. We really, especially back in the the late 1800s, early 1900s, we supported temperance, which is funny because temperance doesn't mean abstinence. Temperance means be moderate.
Right.
But somehow that grew into ban all alcohol, and the Methodists went with that and supported prohibition. And we weren't supposed to support or buy anything that has alcohol in it, but they've loosened up. I mean, I'm sure some places aren't loosened up, but New Jersey's loosened up quite a bit. And as long as you're responsible and you're not bringing it into the church where you might have alcoholics, stumble over it,
Right.
you're good. Yeah. What you do in your private life responsibly is no concern to the church as they look at it now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, technically it's still a disciplinary thing where, you're not supposed to be buying or supporting alcohol because of the vice that it can be for some. But I think by and large, they've realized that it's a little draconian. So,
Yeah.
Hence that's why me as a Presbyterian can't use wine for Eucharist at my place of employment because it's run by the Methodist Church. Well, it's a Methodist ministry.
Yeah. And I overall support that. I mean, if you were doing like wine with an individual who's like, Catholic or Episcopalian or something like that, then that's one thing. But I think overall, recognizing that there are people all over the place with alcohol and having alcohol available and someone falling off the wagon because they had communion, that's certainly not the kind of grace we want to be imparting to them. So I support that general rule, but don't tell me I can't have my beer because I like my beer. So, or my hard crystal.
Yeah, you'll find out we pastors drink a lot. It's just a habit.
Well, it's how you start your show, so it's got to be important.
It is important. So, I don't know if you're into bourbon or whiskey.
Oh,
but
well,
we,
Not
me.
much.
No. Okay. We occasionally do shows just with bourbon or
Yeah.
whiskey.
Yeah. We have actually friends who run a podcast called God and Whiskey, both of whom host it. Both whom host it are Methodist pastors. So if that tells you something, and one lives in Jersey, the other in North Carolina. So like I said, I think it's loosened up mostly everywhere, but
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, like you said, I mean, it's supposed to be temperance.
Temperance, right? Temperance. As long as you are temperate, have at it. If you're not, you stop.
Yeah.
So, well, that concludes our. I never even sipped my beer. So, cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, that's enough liquor talk.
Okay, we're done. Yep. Well, we're not done, but we're done. So that brings us into our most excellent music segment. Okay, so I have to admit I gave this portion of it 0 thought. So I'm going to pass it on to you, Sal, to tell me what you're listening to, and I'm going to give this some thought.
Well, I gave it about 10% thought. I didn't have anything ready until a friend of mine texted me and said, "Hey, did you hear Wolfgang Van Halen's tribute to his father?" For those of you who don't know, Eddie Van Halen died last month. So his son, who is actually the bassist for Van Halen for the last couple of years, put out a tribute song called Distance. And I've watched it 3 times already, and I've cried every single time. I think the 3 of us as fathers could understand why. But I think it's a good example of showing that what grief is like. Our music, Chris, tends to have themes to it. So, it's just a good thing about grief. And he actually wrote it to his father before he died, as he was writing it, or as he was dying. And when Eddie Van Halen died, Wolfgang said, I think I need to record this, which is part of a good, healthy grieving process. And he did. And he wrote it. And it was a good thing. And I think it's a good thing about grief. And he actually wrote it to his father before he died, as he was writing it, or as he was dying. When Eddie Van Halen died, Wolfgang said, I think I need to record this, which is part of a good, healthy grieving process. So if you get a chance, we'll link it in the notes.
Yeah, I'll check that out. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, love Van Halen. So
Van Halen is just they've well surpassed legendary.
Yeah, I didn't realize that his son was playing in the band. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah.
Started playing with them. They went when they did their first reunion tour back in 2007-ish. Wolfgang was like 16 years old.
Wow.
And joined the band.
So cool.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to see them in their last tour, 2012, at MSG, which was crazy. It was a really good show.
Was Wolfgang playing with them at that point?
Wolfgang was playing with them.
Yep.
So,
I know he said that his having Eddie Van Halen as his dad was both a blessing and a curse, as I'd imagine it was. But clearly, I know that he was recently on record of saying that like this has hit him a lot harder, I think, than he realized, and has really been struggling with, missing his dad, obviously. And so I've heard the song because Sal shared it with me, and it is a tearjerker. Just because,
I think when your father is such a public figure and has literally changed rock and roll, that kind of looms heavy. Like, I'm sure all of us have our own dad issues that we deal with and how dads loom over us, but he had those big shoes to fill. But then also he did say in that same interview, he did say that he realized how connected him and his father were, because they were both, he obviously inherited the music gene from his father. So
yeah. So here's to Eddie Van Halen and to Wolfgang and family. Awesome. So I have thought of something. It's another instrumental because I haven't really been listening to music a lot lately, which is weird. You know what I think it is? And thank God the season is coming to a close. But with the elections and all of that going on, I've been watching way too much news. And I'm not one to watch a ton of news. I'll catch up on it just to make sure I'm not like ignoramus out there, especially when you're on the pulpit and you're acting like it's a great day and you find out there were, terrorist attacks or something like that. So you gotta keep up on the news, but I'm not one to like sit there glued and watching it, but
with temperance.
Yeah. We're now at the season where temperance is starting to creep back in, and I might go back to, the finer things like the arts. And I'm reading a book right now that I'm really enjoying. So that has pulled me away from TV as well. But I did watch, kind of because of watching the news, I decided to rewatch the series John Adams. I don't know if you saw that on HBO, Chris, or
I heard great things about it though.
It is absolutely excellent. It's a 6-part miniseries. They're each about an hour and 10 minutes long, so it's not like killer to watch an episode. And it's so good you find yourself watching 2, 3. Like time passes like that. But Paul Giamatti plays Adams, and it's just great. Yeah, it's just great. And the music in it is really good, especially the opening theme song. And I found the soundtrack and just could listen to that theme song on repeat. So I'll post that in the episode notes if I can find it. But it has a patriotic 1776 kind of feel to it, but it also has the weight of the responsibility that fell on people like Adams, the ups, the downs, the triumph, and the trials. So just that show really puts into perspective the amount of sacrifice, not just that Adams made or the founding fathers made, but their families too, and the risky business they got into. And so, yeah, that's going to be my choice. I'll post the theme song from that movie.
So similar to Todd's, I got heavily involved in this show Yellowstone.
Ooh, I've heard of it.
Kevin Costner.
Yeah, I love Kevin Costner.
Costner's Montana, cattle ranching, and kind of a patriarchy dynamic, the family run business and people trying to take over the business or take his land, and et cetera, et cetera. But the show has got such good music. So when you were talking that, I was thinking, it's like when you're like so into a show, and I mean, my wife and I got pretty into it. When you enjoy the show so much, and then it's like paired with good music, it's like when you listen to the music by itself, it also brings you back to the show.
Absolutely.
So it's like a double whammy, and it's like you just kind of get obsessed.
Absolutely. It's like the soundtrack to Braveheart, right? Like the movie was phenomenal on its own, but then you pair it to the music.
You just want to go do something.
It's just like freedom. Yeah, it's so great. Okay. Awesome. Yellowstone. So that's a good show. I love Kevin Costner. I just rewatched his take on Wyatt Earp, which is a 3-hour epic, but phenomenal. And actually, after watching a documentary on John Henry Doc Holliday, I found that actually the movie, the film, leaves very little detail out. I mean, it is very historically accurate, and it's a great film. So.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I didn't, I don't really gravitate, I guess, towards shows in this genre, but it, like you said, I mean, you watch one episode and then you just want to keep it going. Then your 3 seasons done, and you're like, when is the 4th season coming?
Right.
But yeah, I went down the rabbit hole of like trying to find every song. I wanted to know what the songs were. There's a guy, Colter Wall, who's I've always liked country music, but the way the country music is on just kind of the radio, it's more more poppy, obviously.
Yeah.
But this guy, I mean, it's like, I don't know, I guess it's real western folk kind of.
And that's a different feel from modern country music. Yeah.
Oh, sure, 100%.
Like
you can feel it when he sings. Like there's some real emotion connected to it. The words make sense.
Yeah. And they're usually, I mean, unfortunately, country became, I think modern country not only became pop, but it became kind of like the Jerry Springer show where, you're born in the back of a truck and
it's a formula.
It's a formula. Like some guy is cheating on the girl and the girl scratches the keys down the truck and, slashes the tires. And a couple of those songs are good and you can kind of like get into them. But after a while, it's just like, ugh.
I can tell you the formula right now. It's beer.
Always.
An American Jesus.
Yes. And
yep.
I think you get back to some of the classics like Johnny Cash and some of the greats of old country Western music. They were storytellers. They were folk musicians.
You guys got to check this guy out.
I will.
Well, all of his stuff is good, but a lot of people have compared him to Cash.
Okay.
And I think the guy, he's in his 20s. Like, I think he's super young, but he's just got this voice where it's like, wow, you're just kind of blown away.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, it's I picked it up from that show Yellowstone. So.
Cool. I'm definitely going to check out the show, and I'm definitely going to check out that musician as well. I'm interested in hearing it. I'm an eclectic music listener. I listen to things of all genres, but the closest to pop rock country I get typically is like Garth Brooks, who I love just because he's obviously a country musician, but he's also a damn rock star. I just love his persona.
His whole generation, I feel like was kind of before the whole kind of get just put to a spot.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, they kind of set up the current music in some ways by making it more mainstream, but they were still pretty much country.
Yeah. That's kind of when I stopped listening to country, was that generation.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely when it switched over to being mainstream.
Let me tell you, there was nothing greater, and I've been to a lot of concerts. There was nothing greater than being at Garth Brooks Live from Central Park, 1999. it was 1998 or 99. I think it was 99. My friend and I just last second said, let's go. And like somehow thought we were going to get to where we could see him on the stage. And we did, but almost got into a couple fights trying. But we did. And he was about this big, little itty bitty person. But they had screens so you could see it. And Billy Joel came out and played along with him. And it was just like, it was just iconic. Yeah. So, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. So that is our most excellent music segment.
Rock on.
Rock on.
I guess that leads us to our main segment, which is martial arts.
Absolutely.
Well, and specifically, we're having you on, Chris, because you're who we know. So I figured if you wanted to give a little background, like your martial arts history. Obviously, you and I kind of have a shared history with martial arts.
Yeah, why don't we do that? And Sal, you and I can also share our martial arts history as well.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit your martial arts history, what you got into it, why you stuck around, what made you want to do both traditional stand-up and jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, definitely.
What kind of inspired you to start the school?
So I started when I was 5. I remember the conversation literally as clear as day. I was leaving. I guess, my dad had picked me up from, I don't know, I guess it's kindergarten or pre-K, one of those. And he asked me if I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. And that was literally it. So that same day we went, I grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey. And we went to a school on Cedar Lane in Teaneck, Chunji Academy, which is where I started and which is where I stayed until I was 25. So from pretty much the age of 5, 6 to 25, I took some time off in the high school years, but that's where I did everything. That's where I got my black belt, advanced black belts. Everything was through my original instructor, Grandmaster Brett Kasser. It was, I was obsessed. I think I went 3-4 times a week. It's what I did every day after school. Got my friends involved in it. We all did it together. I didn't realize much of anything beyond the physical until much later. It was a skill that you were just kind of getting better at and better at. You could do cool things. You could see the stuff in the movies. And you're like, oh, I could do that too. When you're 13, 14 and 15 years old, it was just kind of a cool thing to have with obviously for yourself and also, with your friends. And then, you're competitive with your friends and you want to be able to do things better than them and they want to do things better than you. And there was always that kind of friendly competition. And then, going to tournaments, that was also fun. Mm-hmm. It wasn't till it was before. So I went to college, 19 years old, however old you are. I don't remember those things anymore. 18, 19. I trained at a school. So that was Taekwondo, right? All those years were Taekwondo, classical Korean martial art. It wasn't the Olympic style of Taekwondo. It was the other side, the ITF. It was kind of a more of a free-flowing kickboxing style of sparring, at least. A lot of the self-defense.
Closer to karate.
Closer, yeah. It was. People actually referred to it as Korean karate. So that's all the experience I had was all striking based. I went to college and I trained, I went to a school in Connecticut and I trained at a school there. It was at an ITF school. And this guy was also very good, real hardcore school, hardwood floor, for all the Taekwondo people out there. Every class started with every form from white belt to black belt. That's how you started your class. And then you did your, the meat and potatoes of the class. But I remember when I was out there, I did a tournament and the tournament had some crazy kind of rules where you could do takedowns. you couldn't do anything after the takedown, I think. Yeah, because I would have gotten destroyed. But you could do takedowns. And I remember and I got taken down like literally every single time. It wasn't even, I didn't know anything about any of that. And I was like, wow, that was, so I kept that in the back of my head, and I was like, wow, that was kind of crazy. It was cool, but it was crazy. Transferred out of that school in Connecticut, went to New Jersey, kept training with my T-Nex school. Still all, Taekwondo stuff. And then it was, I guess, around 22 or 23 when a buddy of mine, a training partner, he's like, let's try something else. And we had both kind of decided on jiu-jitsu just for the mere fact that it was like literally the other side of the spectrum. You had your hard art, which was like, your Taekwondo, your karate. And then jiu-jitsu was supposed to be the gentle art. But it was grappling, all I knew it was at that time was just like, you're going to grab each other. And I remember how easy it was for me to get taken down. I was like, let me learn what that's all about. So we both found a school. He found a school where he lived, which was in Lyndhurst. And I found a school, which was where I was living in the Fairlawn area at the time. We were living in Elmwood Park. So we checked his out first, and, straight Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, tiny place. Professor Chris Laciura, he's my one and only Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor. Tiny place, but it was like, it was hardcore. I remember going in the first day, me and a friend of mine, and we just sat there and just watching people literally smash each other into the floor. And, when you're looking at it, you don't realize like what it actually entails. You're just like, okay, they're on the ground, they're grabbing each other. This is kind of what I was thinking that I wanted to do. So let's do it. Good to go. And that's what started my jiu-jitsu journey. I must have been, I got to say 23 or 24, I would say. And, 10, 11, 12 years later, got my black belt in that. And those are my two babies. I have my Taekwondo past, and I have my jiu-jitsu present and future. Not to say that Taekwondo isn't a part of my future. I can't do much of the kicks anymore, unfortunately. That stuff just wrecks me. But so many of the principles taught by my instructor, my Taekwondo instructor, I use every day. I mean, I use it in business. I use it in parenting. I use it in, being a husband. It crosses the crossover effect of everything that you learn in martial arts is so huge and so vast. You can literally draw upon it every day. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's where the spiritual comes in.
Yeah.
And then as far as the school, going back to when I was in college, I remember I had a conversation with my dad. And I was like, I think I was doing business at the time. And I think I was like, I might want to open a school. So I kept that kind of in my head, martial arts school, might want to open a school. And when I transferred out of Connecticut back to Jersey, that's when I really started to become like a full-time instructor for my instructor, basically teaching all the classes, all the kids' classes, adult classes, private lessons, and just kind of learning how to be a teacher. Had really nothing we didn't start really anything about a school, but just kind of be a teacher. And I did that basically, I think it was my sophomore, my junior, my senior year of college. I think. Yeah, I don't know. I was joking with somebody about when this whole thing happens, like literally 6 months of 2020 are just erased, and you're like so thrown off on what month it is, where you are.
You aren't kidding.
So long story short, my instructor got a call from Sal's instructor, basically saying, I'm getting out. I'm selling the school. Do you have anybody in mind that's looking to do this? And then my instructor came to me and said, we got an opportunity. Let's go check it out. And the rest is history. 2010, that was West Parkway, Pompton Plains, second story school. Went to check it out. I said, yeah, let's do it.
Above a gymnastics school.
Above a gymnastics academy.
Yep.
700 square feet.
Wow.
Tiny little spot.
That was a cool little spot.
Yep.
I miss that school.
I still tell people, I was like, that setup was phenomenal. I mean, you had the main training floor, which is completely enclosed, which means no parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then you had the waiting room, which was basically the same size, behind the plexiglass, plenty of tables, plenty of chairs, and then a separate office, like away from that. The setup was awesome.
Right.
Just that particular gymnastics academy went in a different direction and said, you got 2 months to go. So I said, okay.
As it happens. Yeah.
And that's, so as Chris alluded to, that's kind of where his and I paths crossed. Similar to Chris, I started the Taekwondo when I was probably a little older, probably 7 or 8. Parents wanted to get me involved in some sort of physical activity and kind of let me choose. And I knew there was a school opening in Pompton Lakes, the Academy of Taekwondo. It was then at one point run by a guy named Rich Raciti. Chris knows of him.
Yep.
I'll just leave it at that. He's a character. Traditional ITF school. So grew up in that system, went for my black belt, actually tested for my black belt. At that point, Raciti had transferred the school over to the instructor that sold the school to Chris, Anthony. So senior of high school, actually tested for my black belt the day of my high school graduation. Actually rolled up to my high school graduation late, snuck into line as we marched up to the field.
Priorities. That's right.
He was like, right. Do you want your black belt or not?
Hey, at least you rolled up to your graduation.
So I got my black belt through Anthony. I kept training with him until into my 20s. Took a couple of breaks here and there. Took a break, found a school out in Iowa when I went to seminary. I was the first to read black belt at that point. When I went to seminary, found a school in Iowa that was kind of a mixture. It was one of these, weird schools where they start their own system. And it was a mixture of...
We talked about those.
Yeah. It's a mixture of Taekwondo, ITF Taekwondo, and Judo. So that was my first introduction to some of like the takedowns and stuff. But I found it because it was the closest to ITF Taekwondo I could find. Started training there, came back to Jersey over winter break and told Anthony, I was like, so, and this is probably 6 or 7 years after I got my black belt. Said, so can you test me for my next degree? And had to twist
7 years, right?
7 years.
Supposed to be 2.
Yeah, in the Taekwondo system, it's supposed to be for every degree you go up in black belt, it's that number of years.
Right.
So from 1 to 2 is 2 years, 2 to 3 is 3 years, and so on. So finally got him to promote me to second degree, and then 2010 rolled around. By that point, really myself and another person, Eileen, who Chris knows, we were essentially doing all of the teaching for Anthony. He was a sheriff at the time, so we were pretty much for free doing all the teaching. And he tells me, "Oh, there's a new guy going to come in and take over the school, help out. He'll pay you." I was like, "Okay." And that was a matter of how it was handled on his end. I think was unfair to Chris.
It was interesting, to say the least.
But eventually I came around.
The look on Sal's face on my first day, kind of explained it all because Sal wears his emotion on his face so well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He just kind of had this look like, what are you talking about? What's happening?
What? Who are you?
Yeah.
All of Anthony's stuff was gone, and here was this new guy, Chris, who was like, "Oh, hey, I'm Chris. I'm the owner of the school." And I was like, So I think I stuck around and helped you out with that class, and then it took me a while to come back, and finally came back and convinced as many of these students as I could to, hey, let's stick around. This Chris guy is a good guy. And then under Chris, myself and Eileen tested.
Don't you love that though? Because I find that in the church, right? Like a pastor comes in, they do their thing, and then when it's time for them to leave, you have to convince people to stay. You shouldn't be married to the pastor. You're married to the place, into the art, into the,
Well, there's, loyalty is a huge thing for instructor to student. Mm-hmm. I've never ever demanded loyalty. I've always felt that if you lead by example and you teach and train a certain way, that happens organically. But there's a lot of instructors that demand it. So if that instructor leaves, students will follow because it's kind of like doing it out of fear, not necessarily because
that makes sense.
I want to be with you. I want to be in your teaching.
In the church, that's very foreign, but it's not foreign that people would be loyal to the pastor, but it's a foreign in the sense that the institution itself of the church, I don't know about Presbyterian, but certainly Methodist, frowns big time upon like following pastors out of churches, because in some churches that would just kill the church, but I guess in a business model, in a business setting, such as martial arts, I could see where that, and each one is probably individually owned, and I could see where that would happen. Yeah.
Well, and I think Chris and I both came up in the generation of, at least for the Taekwondo end of it, came up in that generation of when you trained and you sparred, you basically beat each other up. It was, full contact as hard as you could go.
Hold on. That's not me, I swear. I'm not calling you.
Yep, that was me. That was my dad. So that was part of the loyalty too. It was Chris's approach was a different approach to teaching. It was a more teaching approach, more humane approach. And then Chris is who introduced me to the rolling, which I've been a reluctant student, so to speak. I've been very much an off and on student.
So Sal, are you telling me that your original instructors were Chris?
They were.
No, strike hard, strike first, no strike hard, no mercy.
That's right. We did a Cobra Kai episode last month.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah.
Just to pull, it's amazing how that has just had a rebirth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like good. Like the show is actually really, really good.
The show is phenomenal. It actually, I actually think it makes the original Karate Kid movies better because it fills in so many details you didn't even know you needed. Right. It's just a great show. So I have very limited background in martial arts. When I was a teenager, I was bullied a lot as a kid. When I was a teenager, my dad's answer to that was, well, come in the basement. I'll teach you how to box. Yeah. But I was always interested in martial arts. I loved, Bruce Lee. I loved like watching those types of films. I had his Tao of Jeet Kune Do that I had read, and
of course, yeah,
loved the philosophy aspect of it. Though at the time I didn't realize that's what that was. But as a philosophy undergrad, I now know otherwise. But I just loved the general spirituality of it, but also the building of self-confidence and self-esteem and, all of those values that come as an integral part of martial arts. So I would say I was probably 13, maybe 14 when I started martial arts. I went to Vince's karate school or karate academy, which was in Hardyston, New Jersey. And Vince taught Tang Sudo, and which is kind of like the sister of Taekwondo.
I think it even predates it, right?
I think it predates Taekwondo. Yeah. And I got up to green belt with 2 stripes, I believe, which the next would have been red belt and then black belt. But then, as with everything in my later teens, I lost. I was going through my own stuff, depression, all that stuff, and I just lost interest and never went back. And I'm not one to regret many things. I do regret giving that up, though, because it was a sense of accomplishment that I don't think I had anywhere else in my life at the time. Now I have accomplishments I can look at and be encouraged by, but at that time, I think that was a mistake to give that up.
Well, that age in particular it's one of the most challenging ages on an instructor end, like as a school owner, and on the student end to get going. Because most schools don't have a broad, like a program for the 12s, the 13s, the 14s. So they're either going to be with the adults,
which I was,
or they're going to be the biggest kids, the oldest kids in the kids class.
Yeah.
So, and even if they're with the adults, which is probably better for them as long as the instructor knows what he's doing, knows what she's doing. The frustration levels creep in because they're adults, right? So it's going to be tough to keep up, this and that and this and that. So then you're quitting at an age potentially where you're your most vulnerable psychologically.
Correct. Yeah.
And I hate to see it with my kids. I'm like, if you're in high school, if you're going to college, if you're in college locally, like it should be mandatory that you're here.
Yeah.
Because you wake up feeling one way, and by midday you're feeling a completely different way, and then you go to bed feeling a completely different way.
Right.
You need something to regulate those hormones. You need something to give you that, like you said, that sense of accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard age for a school, but it's like it's even it's a hard age for obviously the student as well. But they need it.
Yeah.
That's where it becomes, and Chris, you and I have talked about this, that when you get older, the training becomes therapeutic almost.
Oh yeah.
I have a joke with my colleague because I'm the only spiritual caregiver at the facility, so not everyone understands what I deal with. So oftentimes my only outlet going to the school and training, whether it was the stand up or more recently the ground stuff with you. And I same impression when I first tried the grappling stuff with you was that first time getting choked out. Oh my God. Yeah. Your mind races like, oh my God. Like you walk in as a 3rd degree black belt in Taekwondo and you're like, oh, I know nothing. So
that's a humbling,
a very humbling thing.
Feeling.
It's a humbling experience. It's a healthy experience as long as you can admit it to yourself and not rationalize it in a way where you're just kind of protecting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's challenging because I had the same experience when I started jiu-jitsu. I was already a well-accomplished black belt, and I was about to open a school and this and that. But when you're a white belt in jiu-jitsu, you're a white belt in jiu-jitsu. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter what else you know. That's right.
Doesn't matter what else you know.
Yeah, it's almost. I mean, not that you completely throw your skills out the window, but it's almost like throw everything you learned out the window because this is something different. This is a different approach to martial arts.
But it's actually more helpful to throw it out the window. And embrace what's in.
Absolutely.
I've seen a lot of martial artists try to cross over to the other art, and it's like they're literally trying to do their comfortable art in the new art.
It does,
and it's like it's just creating this friction. I'm like, no, you got to give over. You got to give yourself over to it. You got to
embrace the new art, and then one day down the road, when you've mastered both, you can worry about how you mix and match. But to do it while trying to learn the new art, it doesn't do justice to the art, and it doesn't help you.
Correct.
And that's a life lesson in itself, is being willing to and aware enough to admit you don't know what you're doing.
Well, and that comes down to a spiritual, I think, a universal spiritual truth and reality. In scripture, it says that that God exalts the humble, but humbles the proud. And even if you take God out of that, I mean, the idea that if you are a really proud person, and you can't admit to yourself that you ever do wrong, or that you have any sort of failings, moral or otherwise, you're eventually going to learn how small you really are. One day or another, that world is going to come crashing down in on you, and you're not going to be able to. Not only you're not going to be able to avoid it, but you're not going to be able to face it because your opinion of yourself was way higher than it ought to be. And I think that's a lesson in life, period, but certainly in learning martial arts. And this is where
it gets accelerated.
Yeah.
Which is, and it gets accelerated, I would say, more so in jiu-jitsu, just for the fact that, like, Sal, and myself, we came through a Taekwondo background. It's a very traditional art form, but even in that world, you can hide behind the belt.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You would go to tests, you'd go to tournaments, and you would see it firsthand. You'd see a guy with 25 stripes on his black belt. You're like, okay, what's that all about? Like, really? You don't.
He must be 80 at that point, right? Like.
Should be, right?
Right.
But in jiu-jitsu, you can't do that. You can't, whatever is around your waist, whatever you feel like you are, has been earned 100%.
Yeah.
And through that earning process, there's going to be a ton of humbling and becoming honest with yourself about
yeah,
you feel who you are.
And that's what I appreciate about the jiu-jitsu, even though I barely train in it and I need to get back into it. But is that, like Chris said, you in the traditional Taekwondo world, a lot of emphasis and a lot of respect and tradition is put behind the belt, because you've, quote unquote, earned it. Ironically, in a lot of Taekwondo schools, you can earn that belt, and if it's a McDojo, you can earn it pretty quickly, which kind of takes away from the whole respect to the belt thing. But yeah, you can hide behind the belt, because at that point you then become the teacher. The student becomes the teacher. Whereas I think in jiu-jitsu and some of those other, or judo or other traditions, where you're always the student. There's never a teacher-student dichotomy. There's just a student dichotomy. And
yeah, it's true.
And I think, and that's kind of evident in what it took you 12 years, Chris, to get your black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Just about.
There's no set markers like in Taekwondo. Chris and I know, first degree black belt 1 year, second degree black belt 2 years, third degree 3 years. In jiu-jitsu, you don't earn a belt until you earn a belt. It's based on your ability, but also your willingness to be humble and to learn.
Yeah.
And that's a hard adjustment for some folks to make.
Well, in that philosophy, I also saw in Bruce Lee, who ironically, as a person, there were two sides to Bruce Lee. There was the brilliant, like, martial artist and philosopher, but then there was this arrogant kind of ego that existed there as well, which is human, right? Like we have more sides than just, we're not two-dimensional. But the idea behind Jeet Kune Do, and I remember people would ask, like, so what belt am I starting off as? And he's like, well, what do belts are to hold your pants up. Like it's like, you don't need a belt. This isn't about winning in like some sort of award system. This is about learning what you need to learn to rise up to the occasion, and to be the martial artist that you can be. And we can discuss the pros and cons of Jeet Kune Do itself, but the philosophy behind it is, no, this isn't a belt status kind of thing. This is a merit-based thing. This is like, have you earned this or have you not? And until you earn it, you're not getting it. And I think that's important. I really do. That's why, even to become pastors, Sal, you and I know this, that's not something they give you a time limit on. I mean, there's a time limit cap. Like if you take too long, bye-bye. But they're not going to tell you, okay, well, in 1 year you'll be certified, in another year you're going to go before the Board of Ordained Ministry, and then in 2 years after that you'll be ordained. It is when you get there, if you get there, and it really depends on you at that point, and your ability to hear criticism, constructive critique, your ability to process, be self-reflective, to be humble, and to take things in stride, or if not, you're eventually not going to make it through because,
I think you hit it on the head, because it's like a funnel, right? It's like you have a ton of white belts, and then they funnel to the blue belt, and then the blue belts get funneled to the pro belt. And if you make it, you make it. You get weeded out and you don't get weeded out necessarily if you can't do the arm bar, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's more of those like personality traits that you haven't corrected yet.
Right.
You can't get to that level.
Yeah. It's on you at that point.
It's like
on you.
There's some black belt thing that went around the internet where 1,000 people start training and 100 get to a certain level, and only, 1 or 10 make it to black belt.
Yeah, our R's are never very good. I don't show those to new students.
No,
but yeah,
the likelihood is you're going to quit somewhere between now and black belt, right?
But
the truth is, and here's where I think the two intersect also between spirituality and martial arts. In the church, your value is not determined on whether you get ordained. Your value is determined on God loving you. And so whether you're ordained or otherwise, God loves you. That never changes. But certain people are called into something and they get ordained because that's what they're called into. Other people think they are or would like to be, but they don't have what it takes to actually make it there. And actually the church saying no, not yet to somebody who isn't ready to be ordained is actually showing love and grace to them, rather than putting them in a position they aren't going to be able to handle.
They can't live up to that responsibility, and that's a huge thing about promoting somebody to black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Correct.
Promoting black belt to anybody, promoting any art that really kind of holds that rank at its value, and the school comes from a good place. You if I just throw a black belt on you 8 years in because you put in a good amount of time and this and that, but the qualities of the martial artists are not carrying over outside the school. What are you doing to that? But you're just giving that person literally like a weapon.
Yeah, you're not helping them, you're hurting them. Yeah.
You're not creating a rounded individual. You're creating a really good kicker or puncher or submitter, or someone can do a darn good arm bar, but they can't translate those qualities into everyday life.
Or you're enabling an overconfident bully who's going to get his, pardon my French, ass kicked one day when he bullies the wrong person because he's not really up. And again, a martial artist would not be a bully because somebody at the level of black belt, somebody at any level in martial arts would realize that this is not about fighting. This is about self-control, discipline, about the art, about being centered, but also about being able to diffuse situations of violence, not spark them or inflame them. So again, if you're somebody who's not able to understand that, you don't have the humility it takes to realize your place in the universe, that is like a degree for disaster. I mean, that's what that is.
It's definitely true. It's one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu in general is just because you can literally practice, you can roll with somebody, you can grapple, whatever you want to call it, at 100% intensity, right? So you are feeling exactly what it would feel like if someone is trying their hardest to resist you from what you want to do to them for what they want to do to you. And and you feel that sensation almost on a daily basis. If you train every day, you're going to feel it every single day. So what you find is like when people are making it to like purple belt and brown belt and black belt, it's like they're going to be some of the most docile, kind of low key, not super outwardly aggressive people out there, because they embrace it and engage in it so often. It's like you have somebody that comes into the school who is like overly aggressive, overly eager. They either completely do the 180, which is what you love to see, or they don't make it past the first year because they can't understand the fact that I'm so big, I'm so strong, I'm so aggressive. Why is this not working? It's got to be the art. It's not me. I go somewhere else. I go try something else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. When you have that "it's not me" mentality, it's a hard thing to overcome.
It's a dangerous one, because even like we were saying, when eventually that day of humbling should come and you kind of get corrected, sometimes that person's psyche is still can't recognize that.
They're just not going to accept it. Right.
It's like, man, okay, now we got an issue.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next thought, and I think to kind of cap off this part, I think those things that we've picked up, that discipline, that humbling, that whatever the things are from whatever art that we pick up, and we did an episode on perseverance. You learn to apply those things, the discipline, to your everyday life. I mean, Todd and I couldn't have become, go through college, graduate school, ordination process, all of that stuff without some sort of discipline and drive that, I learned that from all my years of martial arts.
Yes. None more than currently, right? Yeah. The ability to persevere.
Yeah. Innate, right?
Yep. Amen.
Yeah. A word, whether you're Taekwondo or Tang Sudo, you learn very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. I used to dread when I heard that word shouted out, because that meant I was planking or doing something I didn't want to be doing. But it does teach you to persevere. And obviously COVID, Chris might have changed this a little bit, but talk about like, how does it feel, as obviously that stuff has helped you become a successful owner of a school. You've got your rank and all that accomplishments, but now you own a school. You're now creating students.
Yes.
How has that been in the pandemic? And then secondly, how is it to know that you're creating better human beings?
I love it. That's why I do it. It's an amazing feeling, whether it's a kid or an adult. And it never gets old. I mean, I've only been doing this a little over 10 years, a school owner, but it's like, every once in a while you get a story, one of your students, and whether it's after a promotion, whether it's after testing, whether it's after a tournament, whether it's after that person's accomplishment in their daily life, whatever it is, it makes the work fulfilling 100%. In the pandemic, connecting with students obviously was challenging, but it was also pretty enlightening. I was, first of all, going back to persevering, right? You got to persevere. I feel like if I didn't have martial arts as my backbone, and I had another job, and it was this, and it forced me to close, forced me to shut down, whatever it was, I would have been like, okay, I'll quit. I'll do something else. But I literally remember sitting on my couch. I'm a part of this martial arts group, and they're like, here's what you got to do. You got to get Zoom. And this is before anybody got Zoom. and it's a joke between me and my wife, but I am not good at anything. I mean, I'm okay. I'm getting better, but I'm really not very good. So I'm studying the video, what Zoom is all about, and this and that, and how to do it. And I'm like, is this really what's going to happen? Am I really going to have to like switch to Zoom? And then it turns out, yes, you are. So
undoubtedly.
But I did it. I did it at a time where I think like I don't know if it saved the school because we kind of seemed right back to where we were, but I shut down on a Saturday. I started running Zoom on Wednesday. I had the schedule made. I had everybody had a certain way to, kids had their classes, super little kids had their classes, teens had their class, adults had their class. And then I was even giving workouts to the parents. Like I was trying to cover all the bases. One, it kept me still super busy. So I really never even thought about like what was happening.
Right.
But two, when you touched on Sal, like connecting during the pandemic, like I was able to connect. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but I was running classes just as if I was running classes when people are coming in and out of the school. I was just doing it on the computer. I really wasn't thinking twice about it. I just was in a forward momentum that never stopped.
Yeah.
And
people, I mean, that truthfully, that was my experience in the church. And I'm sure, Sal's in a medical situation, so that's a whole different ball game. But in the church, it was like one Sunday, 1 week, it was like, okay, things are really coming to a head. There might be a shutdown. So I put together, I did a service, but I encouraged people to stay home. We'll just, I set up my iPhone and we'll stream live on Facebook. And, right after that service, I came home and realized that things were going to go differently. And so I remember it was right after that service. I put together a plan saying this is what might happen throughout this week. We might close. And if we close, this is the game plan. By Friday, or it was Friday or Saturday morning. It was Saturday morning. They were going to shut everything down Sunday, where only only essential driving was allowed on the roads. Yeah. And so I called up my worship team and said, hey, can you all come in today in a couple hours and we'll record the service for tomorrow? And so we did. We came in, we recorded it. I uploaded it to YouTube, premiered it. And from that point on, week after week after week, we pre-recorded our services remotely. And then I had to piecemeal it together into a service. But it was like, for me, nonstop. Like I was going, and it wasn't ideal, but we were making it happen. And for everybody else, they were getting some sort of worship if they were technologically able to do it.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you got this, Chris, but certainly in the church, there were some people that thought I was on vacation from March onward because, they didn't see me.
Yeah. Luckily I didn't get that. I mean, thankfully, Facebook, blessing and a curse, but in that particular period, it was a blessing because everybody could see the school still doing,
it's a bit of a different situation.
Yeah.
I can attest to that because as I've admitted, I kind of train cyclically. I'll get in a routine of training. I'll stop training. I'll train. I'll stop training. So I was in a routine of training, and then around the holidays, because clergy life gets super busy, I stopped training. And I said, "Oh, I'll go back in the spring." And then,
so we all.
Sorry, maniacal laugh here.
And that being in a healthcare situation, I know, Chris, you had. I don't know if we still have students. You had students who were in the medical field who were in the same boat of working. I was working 6 days a week, nonstop, having a baby on top of that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you running your classes on Facebook. I was like, oh, I need to do a class because I'm stressing the link out.
Yeah.
So did you train on Facebook?
So I wouldn't do them live, but I let Chris know, hey, I'm doing these classes once the baby's down.
I had them all recorded and then I put them out there, and whoever wanted to take advantage could.
That's the beauty of Facebook Live is once it's live, you can also save it and publish it, and people can go back to it. I mean, and then, it has its ups as well as its downs, but yeah. And
I think recently over the summer, as restrictions were lifted, Chris was offering. One-on-one private classes.
Right.
Took good advantage of that because I figured, hey, this is my chance to train and to help support the school. And that might sounds like that might change again soon, just based on what's going on.
Yeah.
It's been challenges, and that's part of why we wanted to bring you on the episode is, I know it's been tough for all of us. We want to promote the school as much as possible and help each other out.
Let me ask this in a few short words. Chris, if you could explain to our listeners what the importance of martial arts is at its core, that would be awesome for them to hear, I think. No pressure.
Yeah. I probably need another hour, but as short as possible. It's honesty. That's really the biggest thing for me. It's obviously I'm not the first to say it. Bruce Lee said it first. Mm-hmm. Honestly expressing yourself, and that's what it is. And sometimes you may not like what you see, and that's why the training always allows you a second try, or third try, or fourth try to get it right. And then you're on that journey of never-ending self-improvement. And that's it.
Yeah. Amen.
Hey,
man, that was not only concise but powerful. So.
That was very powerful. That's very true. Growing up an awkward kid, martial arts was the one thing that I was good at because it took training and repetition. But it makes you, I think it both spiritually and like chemically, I think it rewires your brain. Like when I started training again with you, Chris, you're like, oh, it's just muscle memory. It trains your body and your mind to think outside of pain and struggle, because it puts.
But also not to run away from it,
not to run away from the pain and the struggle. And there's so many. Todd and I could go on for hours about how that relates spiritually. Mm-hmm. That's when I worked at the hospital, my boss at the hospital even wanted me to I did a didactic for the other chaplains on how martial arts translates into spiritual care. But because it allows you to enter that space of discipline, perseverance, knowing mind over matter.
Like that whole idea of, like you said, perseverance is very much built into the gospel. Jesus says, but those who endure, those who persevere to the end will be saved. This isn't going to be easy. You're not going to just like walk onto the stage and be like, ready to go on moment one. You're going to have trials, tribulations, pain to endure. But if you endure to the end, and that's very much martial arts. It's about learning to, rather than running from the pain and hiding from the pain, which you can't avoid no matter how much you run and hide. In fact, running and hiding only causes more pain. If you face it head on and you endure and you rise above it,
100%. Yep.
Yeah. It's that's why, and we'll get into this in the extra segment, but that's why the church, I wish it would understand that the Hollywood version of martial arts is not the soul of martial arts. They're cool to watch, it's fun to watch, but it's like the real martial arts is so much more in line with spiritual thought, whether it's Christian, Buddhist, or otherwise. It's so much more in line with that than it is what you see on TV.
Which is great. It's interesting that you say that some people still have that perception, because even my small population and community here, the majority of my parents' favorite part of class are my mat chats, where they're just sitting on the floor and we're talking.
Yep.
Because that's where all the physical can be translated into words and then how to be applied. And that's the power. It's, it's not the punch and kick package. It's not the, the how to beat somebody up package. It's everything you said, it's that package.
That internalization, discovering who you are, not only who you are individually, but who you are with in interaction and relation with those around you, which is very much martial arts.
And I'm sure a lot of parents bring their kids in because it is that I want my kid to have the confidence to confront bullies or, the self-confidence bit.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Which was definitely it for me when I was a kid. But when you do the mat chats with them, parents realize that you're not just creating.
It always raises the eyebrows. Like, it is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Oh, he's actually making my child a well-rounded person, not just making him confident.
Yeah, there's something deeper here than just punching and kicking. Yeah. Powerful stuff. Well, I think this is a good note to end our episode, unless anybody else has anything to offer. But if not, then I think this is a good place for us to end. And we definitely will carry the conversation on for our Patreon subscribers. So if you're not one of those, why? Be one.
For the price a month for a pizza, you could support our ministry and see the bonus content.
Yeah. And that's the most expensive. Like you could even just for coffee a month, you could at least listen to audio, or a frappuccino a month, be able to see us on video. But hey, come on over and listen. For those of you who are subscribers, thank you. We appreciate your continued support and hope you enjoy the episode to come. Yeah, I guess in the meantime, Sal, we'll go ahead.
You know where to find us, partyonjohncast.org, Party on Johncast on Twitter and Facebook. Or on Twitter. Chris, we'll put it in the notes of the episode. If you want to real quick tell us where the school is.
Yes.
I know where the school is, but tell the audience where the school is.
Sure. Training for Life Martial Arts Academy, Pompton Plains, New Jersey. We're right on Route 23, 681 Route 23, Pompton Plains. trainingforlifema.com.
Perfect.
It's a training the number 4 life.
MA as in martial arts.com. Correct.
Yes. And that's awesome. So we'll definitely post that to our episode notes. But in the meantime, friends, remember, be excellent to each other.
And don't be a jerk.
Rock on.
Rock on.